Are we ready to go, Deanna?
Give me 1 second. The mics are queuing up.
Okay.
All right, we are ready to go.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this March 5, 2019 Executive Committee conference call of the North Carolina State Board of Education. I'm Eric Davis, Chair of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. I'll now ask Dr. Townsend Smith to call the roll to determine that we have a quorum of the board participating, and I note to all listening that the Executive Committee quorum is 4 members. Dr. Townsend Smith?
Okay, thank you. Chair Davis?
Here.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Dr. Oxendine?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith. Board members were reminded that it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. And if during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Board members, you've seen the agenda for this March 5, 2019 meeting and had the opportunity to review it. Ask if there are any requests for changes to the agenda, and if not, I request a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Olivia Oxendine.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. Motion by Dr. Oxendine. Is there a second?
Second. Amy.
Second by Ms. White.
Excuse me.
Dr. Townsend Smith, can you call the roll to capture the vote?
Yes. Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries. We now have an agenda. So we'll now proceed directly to our report from the FAST NC Steering Committee, and I'll call on former State Superintendent Mr. Mike Ward, Chair of the FAST NC Steering Committee, for this item. Mr. Ward, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, board members. Thank you for the time that you're committing to this process. We've been able to do a lot of good through your generosity and your application of the funds in the North Carolina Education Fund to assist persons who've suffered as a result of Hurricane Florence. We have several applications to bring before you this morning, and we'll start by circling back to a few from previous rounds. The first is from White Oak High School. It's from Principal Chris Barnes. This was from our very first round of applications. You may recall that in the first round of applications, Dr. Barnes submitted an application to help them rebuild or replenish their science labs at White Oak High School. He is being particularly meticulous, as you see in his email message that I shared along with the application. There is an amount from their previous application, just over $1,200, from their full grant amount of $14,000, that they don't need to apply to chemicals after they got another donation of chemicals. And he's asking if he can divert that $1,243 to secure other science materials and textbooks that they lost, to replace those additional materials that they lost in the storm. He was in touch with me, and he said he just wanted to be absolutely above board about the application of these dollars, but wanted, instead of applying all of that to chemical replacement, since he got a donation that would help with chemical replenishment, he wants to use it instead for other science materials and textbooks. Would you like to hear all of, maybe we can do these previous rounds, these applications from previous rounds as a group, Mr. Chair?
Yes, that would be fine. And I just note that I believe this application is the one found on, looks like page 39 of the attachment to our agenda. Board members are looking for the White Oak High School application.
Yeah, it's Onslow County. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned the district. Are there any questions concerning this one?
I have no questions.
Hearing none. The next application from a previous round is from Piney Grove Elementary School. This was an application that we tabled. It's very similar to another application from Piney Grove Elementary School where there were materials to help youngsters prep for the specific materials designed to help youngsters prep for the end of grade tests, and also some organizing folders and materials. The request is just over $400. As was the case with the previous application where these were requested, the teacher indicated in my conversation with her that these are not materials that were lost as a result of the storm, but rather new materials that they would be seeking. And so the steering committee recommends disapproval of the request from Ms. Howell in Robeson County at Piney Grove Elementary School. It was a request for $410.56. Are there questions concerning this one? A vote to disapprove would be consistent with your action in the other instance. Okay, the third and final item from a previous round is from Ms. Chavis. You'll recall Ms. Chavis does social work at Rex Rennert School in Robertson County and another campus as well. Ms. Chavis, in addition to her application from a previous round, you may recall that one in which she asked for food, clothing, and instructional supplies for students she serves through the school social work program. You, by the way, approved part of that application. In addition to that request, she had a separate grant proposal for an outside storage building to store materials that are used in the social work program. But she was very clear in my conversation with her subsequent to the submission of the application that this is not a replacement. There was not a storage building previously. And so the steering committee, in the case of the storage building and the $2,700 related funds for that storage building, the steering committee recommends disapproval. Are there any questions about this one? Hearing none, the next application is an application from Brunswick County, North Brunswick High School. It's an application submitted by the two assistant principals, Callahan Hayes and Brown. The request is for $16,350, and you'll recall, or as you see in the application, sorry, I accidentally closed that. You go to the budget, the page that details the budget items. They did lose a shed. This one was for the band program. They're looking for $1,000 to replace that shed, $2,000 to replace materials lost to the horticultural program. They're also asking for $500 to replace lab materials, science lab materials, $250 to replace a personal chair for one of the teachers, and then $12,000 to replace their gym tarps. They served as a community shelter, provided extensive service to the community as a shelter in the wake of the storm, and the tarps that the special tarps that they had to protect the gym floor surface were ruined in the process, and they need to replace those. And then finally, a $600 scoreboard and timer that also got messed up during the course of their service as a community shelter. The steering committee recommends approval of this application with one caveat. The $250 to replace a personal chair for one of the teachers. We have not been paying for personal losses, and we have precedent for not doing so in the applications that we presented to you previously and that you either approved or disapproved. So that $250 chair, we would stipulate he likely needs a chair, but we would stipulate in the letter of confirmation of grant, of the approval of the grant, if you so decide, that chair would become the property of the LEA, that it is not provided as his personal chair. It's a chair provided for his use, but it would be property of the LEA. So that's our recommendation. Approval with stipulation that the chair become the property of the school. Questions about this one?
My only comment about that chair item is that I was thinking about the possibility of a band booster club or a parent organization getting involved with something like that, finding funds within those parent treasuries to accommodate that kind of need. The overall concept of the need is strong. That one kind of caught my eye a bit.
Yeah, ask about the Jim TARP. I'm probably not familiar with the Jim TARP as I should be. I guess I'm not quite sure on what that is.
I can speak to that one. Having been a high school principal and president of an athletic conference during my time as a high school principal, I can tell you that high school basketball coaches, and rightly so, jealously safeguard the appearance and well-being of their gym floors. And so they buy protective tarps that interlock and are rolled out to protect those surfaces. And it made immediate sense to me when I saw this one and then talked with the assistant principals at the school that these tarps would have been out to protect the floor while the school stepped up and did its duty to serve as a community shelter.
Okay.
This is Amy. So also being familiar with those tarps, they're usually made out of like polyethylene, so I'm having a hard time. They're usually, they protect from spills. They're very difficult to tear, so I'm wondering about the nature of the damage. Again, lots of foot traffic and cots and things like that. Were they torn?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I spoke over you. I apologize.
You did not. I was done. That was. I'm not. Just a question, but certainly not enough to. Those things are done so that people can walk on them and use them. So,
That's my question.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of detail beyond the basic description that their service during the time of the schools being designated and being used as a shelter, that it made a mess of those tarps. But that's as much detail as I have. And y'all, I apologize for diving right into the North Brunswick High School application. That is the first round 7 application, but we said we'd do the previous round applications, the White Oak, Rennert, and Piney Grove applications, and then move on to round 7. I apologize. Is that how we want to proceed, Mr. Chair, with the previous round applications?
Right. We could do those 3 and then come back to North Brunswick.
I make a motion on those previous three that we follow the recommendations that were provided by the committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair
I'll second
Duncan.
that.
Is there a second?
I second.
And that was by, sorry.
18.
Okay, second by Ms. White. Any further discussion? Okay, Dr. Townsend Smith, can you call the roll to capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Great, so motion carries. So, Ward, I guess back to North Brunswick.
Yes, yes. Yeah, any other questions or any additional information I could provide you on this one? Okay. Do we want to take these as a block, or maybe do we have 3 Columbus County applications that we can cover as well? Maybe do Brunswick and Columbus as a block.
Yes.
And then we'll have
do it that way.
four more after that. Okay. All right. From other districts. Okay. Yeah. So the 3 applications from Columbus County are all from Tabor City Elementary School. Unlike some schools where you've gotten a single application en masse from a principal or a group of teachers, Tabor City has tended to send in applications by individual teachers. So you have 3 relatively small applications. The first is from Ms. Fincannon and a couple of her colleagues who work with the Exceptional Children's Program. The water damage that they sustained at Tabor City Elementary School caused damage to materials that they have used. These are materials provided by SRA. They're corrective reading resources, and they are requesting $2,000 to replace those resources. The amount above the $1,812.06 that they document in the application is their estimate for shipping. Questions about this one? Second application from Tabor City Elementary School is from Ms. McKenzie. Ms. McKenzie is a colleague of Ms. Fincannon's. The two of them work together with the Exceptional Children's Program, and both lost computers. Ms. McKenzie's application arrived late for the previous round. She had actually hoped to get it in for the previous round along with Ms. Fincannon's previous application. You approved an application for Ms. Fincannon for 2 computers and 1 printer in the previous round. And that was after you asked me to go back and see if that these resources might be funded through their Exceptional Children's Program. They got a confirmation that they would not be funded through the Exceptional Children's Program, and you subsequently approved Ms. Fincannon's prior round application for 2 computers and a printer. Ms. McKenzie is also asking for the 2 computers. She lost hers as well. And in this case, and they're touchscreen, by the way, intentionally, she is not requesting a printer, but rather a shredder that they lost and that is needed for shredding sensitive documents related to the Exceptional Children's Program. So you have a close precedent on this one with a previous round application from Ms. Fincannon, and in both cases we resolved the question of whether or not they might get funds for these pieces of equipment from the Exceptional Children's Program, and the answer in both cases was no. Any questions about this one?
I'm glad that you clarified that. I'm a bit surprised that DC doesn't provide those resources. So that's information for me.
and I don't know that that's universal, but in these two instances, they made real clear that would not be an option for replacing their equipment. The next application is the final application from Tabor City Elementary School. This is from Ms. Sanderson. She's asking for $293.33 to replace earphones that she uses with her Chromebooks with her kids. When she got back, the moisture had infiltrated the earphones that she had, and they were a moldy mess, in her words. So the committee recommends approval of this one as well. And so we recommend approval of all three of the Tabor City Elementary School applications. Are there any questions about the Sanderson application? Mr. Chair, you have the Brunswick application, Callahan, Hayes, and Brown, and the three Tabor City Elementary applications from Brunswick and Columbus. Before we move on to Craven, Onslow, and Whiteville, do you want to deal with these?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the steering committee's recommendation for North Brunswick High School and the three Tabor City applications. Is there such a motion?
So moved. Olivia Oxendine.
Motion by Dr. Oxendine, and a second.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Duncan. Dr. Townsend, any discussion? Dr. Townsend Smith?
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Great. Motion carries. Mr. Ward.
Okay. The next item that you have before you is an application from Ms. Jordan at J.T. Barber School, J.T. Barber Elementary School in Craven County. This is our first application from Craven County, which you all will recall was especially hard hit. This is an application for preschool equipment. In the application, she makes clear that this equipment and gross motor skill equipment, playground equipment, gross motor skill equipment, was equipment damaged as a result of the storm. They had it outside in a shed, and it was damaged as a result of the storm, and they want to replace it. This is Exceptional Children's Preschool Program. Any questions about this one? We recommend approval.
Can I ask just a definitional question on this one? You said preschool program. Is this for, are these items that are used in a pre-K setting?
It's an exceptional children's program. It's a pre-K program on an elementary school campus. It's part of the elementary school program itself.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Have we, just a separate question out of interest more than anything, have we had any other requests that have been focused on pre-K or earlier development? I don't remember one. It's the one thing that caught my eye.
I don't recall one either, and it may just be bad memory on my part, but I don't recall one.
This is Dr. Townsend Smith. We haven't had any from the review of any of the previous applications.
There's no reason we shouldn't approve it. However, based on that, it's part of what qualifies under the FAFSA rubric, as I understand it. Is that just confirming that fact? But that's how I understand it. Is that right?
That's the way we understood it. Yes.
I think what makes it permissible or allowable is that it is is a pre-K program that is under the auspices of the Exceptional Children's Program.
Right.
And
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. Any other questions on this one? The next item is a request from Jacksonville High School, Ms. Gillette, the assistant principal. This one we spent some time on. We're recommending approval, but we wrestled with this one a bit, and because it doesn't fit precisely the definition of loss or damage that we've applied in most cases. But it reminded us of the application from Northside High School in Onslow County, a sister school in sister school in Onslow County that you approved in a previous application, in a previous round. They are requesting resources to expand their library utility. Their media center, as a result of the losses that kids have experienced and the loss of their homes, and also their faculty members because of lost resources at home, some even without access to internet still at home. The media center has become exceptionally popular as a place to go to do work, recharge devices, that kind of thing. And so they're trying to make the media center more user-friendly. The equipment that you see outlined at the back, everything from charging stations to furnishings to whiteboard painting supplies to convert the walls into whiteboard space. We recommend approval. It reminded us of the Northside application, because the Northside application was a case where they asked for a large TV monitor because their media center, the use of their media center expanded considerably to provide for professional development and a larger learning space because of some learning spaces that they had lost. Are there questions about this?
Remind me again as to why the committee pondered this one.
Well, it's not technically, they didn't lose this furniture that they're asking for in the storm. So the approximation of loss is kind of like the one we applied in the other instance. What was lost was learning space, access to the internet, private workspace, or not private workspace, but workspace for schoolwork, both for kids and for faculty. And so the media center is, the use of it is expanded tremendously as a result of the storm by both faculty and students. But they didn't technically lose these things. These weren't things that they had previously that were lost or damaged in the storm. What was lost was the kind of spaces where people previously did this stuff, and now they're using the school media center as that space.
So how does this compare to a previous one that the committee declined because the resources were not lost as a result of the storm?
I can tell you why we approved it. We decided it was enough like the circumstance at Northside High School where they technically didn't lose a large screen monitor. They lost spaces where they'd been able to do this in smaller groups, either PD for staff or in small group instruction for students, and were instead using the media center as a large group area for PD and instruction, and needed a large screen that people could see from all over the room. We thought it was enough like that, yeah. I hope that helps. Again, it wasn't an easy call, but we recommend approval. Other questions on this one? The next application is also from Onslow County. This one takes us back to Northside High School, the one that I was just talking about. And this is an application from Ms. Jackson. In this case, they're asking for a dance floor. And you may recall that there was a previous application where a dance floor, a dance surface was requested, but it was a replacement of a dance surface that was damaged, compromised by the storm. And you all approved that one. In this case, this is something they want to add. They want to secure a dance floor surface, but it's not something that was lost or damaged in the storm. And the committee recommends disapproval of this request for $3,679.53 from Northside High School. You have previously awarded them a TV, that large monitor. Any questions about this one?
Well, that's about this one, but just sort of if we were asked straight up, distinguishing this one, which was not destroyed in the storm, from the previous one, which was not destroyed in the storm, what would be our go-to point as the committee analyzed it?
So we're looking for some approximation that there is loss that is compensated for by what's requested. We couldn't, in the case of the media center furniture, the description indicated that it was a lost resource of workspace for kids and teachers, a workspace that's also internet supplied, and that the media center resources would help create that space and those resources for the kids. In talking with the principal at Northside, she didn't have a similar description. We talked it through and said, no, this is just something we'd like to have. We really want to emphasize our arts program at a time when kids really need some positive experiences, and we'd like to get a dance floor. The auditorium stage is not all that great a surface.
Okay.
Anyway, I hope that distinction helps. Again, we really had to wrestle with some of these, and it hadn't been easy.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the rubric? For some reason, I'm not able to find. What is the rubric score on that particular application? The one that we're presently discussing.
It's on page 34.
34.
Yeah, I'm having to pull it up. I'll have it up in just a second. Oh, y'all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I sent you the wrong. I sent you the. I did not send you the final version of that. I'm embarrassed. I can the score. Let me go back and go to the one. The rubric score for item 2 would have been 5 because it does not replace a resource that was lost or damaged as a result of Florence. The score for item 5, financial support for initiatives not otherwise funded or reimbursed, that score is a 0. Since it was not lost or damaged in the storm, the criterion is not pertinent to the application. So a total of 65.
Okay, I think I see that. Okay, thank you. That is low.
And it's not a reflection. It's our application of the criteria, but it's it's not a criticism. Yeah, it's not intended at all as a criticism of the folks who submitted the application. I think they definitely want to do good things for the kids in their community. It's trying to be as faithful as we can, sometimes having to apply a significant amount of interpretation to the criteria and what we've learned in going through this process with you all over the course of multiple rounds.
Well, this looks like something they really should get. It's just not appropriate for Fast NC funds. It's the way. Yeah. It's something they obviously could, their dance program could benefit from. It just, for the reasons you described, would not fit here.
Yeah.
I agree.
If there's nothing further on this one, the last application in this round is from Whiteville City Schools from Central Middle School. This is a request from the principal, Ms. Corbett. She's requesting $996.16. I spoke with her, but she also makes pretty clear in the application that this is loss that actually occurred. This is PE equipment and weights. They had a treadmill and a elliptical machine and some weights that were damaged as a result of the storm, and are requesting actually $1,000, but that's $996.16 rounded up. We recommend approval of $996.16 to replace these resources. So those are the four applications from Craven, Onslow, and Whiteville. Mr. Chair, look forward to the board's direction on these.
Okay, and is there a motion to approve these four recommendations by the NC Fast Steering Committee?
I move approval of the recommendations as presented by the steering committee.
Motion by Ms. White. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Duncan. Any discussion?
Just go back to Amy and Alan's concern about one of those applications. So that is not interfering with your vote, I'm assuming, your positive vote approval. It had to do with the dance floor.
I believe we were concerned about the tarp, but no, it is not interfering with my vote.
It's not. I think the recommendation was to not approve, so it doesn't interfere with my vote either.
Okay.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to clarify on that. Vice Chair Duncan, on that particular application, Mr. Ward, can you clarify? Let me go back to that. What the exact recommendation on that was?
Okay, so I heard two in there. One was the concern back at of the gym floor cover back at Brunswick, which we've already approved. So the one where there was a question in this batch of four had to do with a request for a dance floor surface at Northside High School, a request in Onslow County, request from Ms. Jackson, the principal, and we recommended disapproval because we couldn't get to a point where it either was loss or damage or approximated loss or damage as a result of the storm.
Okay, that clarifies the point. Thank you.
Yes, so my original motion stands. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other discussion? Dr. Townsend-Smith, can you capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Ward?
Mr. Chair, that's all the applications we had before you today. The only item that I have remaining is one by way of update. With this round of applications, you've approved from funds, state board funds. Your approvals are starting to approach the upper 300,000s. Deanna Dr. Townsend Smith is getting final figures for us on the actual expenditures, but your approvals are beginning to approach $400,000. So we have worked with communities and schools. You know that they got resources from corporate entities to apply to FAST NC, and we've begun to work with them and have a process worked out with them that mirrors the process with the state board, and mirrors the same criteria. And the steering committee makes a recommendation to them that they in turn take to their board, or will take to their board. And so we are starting to route some, because of where you are in the process, we're starting to route some applications their way as well. Because at this point, we only know of $100,000 that's actually in their hands, and because of the size of some of the applications that we've routed their way, we don't believe there's cause at this point. The steering committee doesn't believe there's cause at this point to recommend rounds of applications beyond those that are already advertised on the web page, the FAST NC web page. That would mean two more rounds 8 and 9. And round 8 closes this Friday, the 8th. Round 9 would close Friday, March 22nd. And unless a lot of new resources come our way, that at this point we don't know about, we would think those rounds would pretty much finish us up. I just wanted to give you that update. See if there are any questions or concerns about where the steering committee is on that. That's what we recommend.
Can I ask two questions?
Yes, sir.
The first one is, have we at this point spent from FAST NC funds the amount that was restored to our budget by the legislature? Because I think there was a directive attached to that all of those funds be spent explicitly for this hurricane damage. And the reason I'm asking the question is, do we want it well, unfortunately, we're going to have other catastrophes at some point for some of our schools. And do we want to be able to have some funding still available in FAST NC to be reactive in the future, but also be mindful of the directive to make sure we spend all the money that was transferred back on this particular very important project for Hurricane Florence? And the second question, which is somewhat a little bit related, I'm a little concerned we've only had one application for Craven County, which, as you pointed out, was so hard hit. So I'm hopeful that we might see something further in the next couple of rounds from them, since we all know that they are one of the counties that had some of the most severe impacts.
Yeah, in answer to your first question, well, let me answer the last question first. We've been in touch multiple times with Megan Doyle, the superintendent in Craven, and she's keenly aware of FAST NC, keenly appreciative. They've been through a really deliberate process of sorting out where they have support from and what their needs are, and whether or not they need these resources. And so today, this is the one we've received, but Ms. Doyle, Dr. Doyle is very aware of FAST NC as a result of multiple conversations going back a few months. and updated within the past couple of months, a couple of times.
Right.
We had not received an application from Bladen, but Bladen, in one of my calls, I've made personal calls to districts where we were surprised that we'd not had applications, from which we were surprised we'd not had applications, and so I took time to make calls to those superintendents. In addition, Fast&C was featured in multiple meetings of superintendents in the Southeast and Sandhills regions when they had their regional convenings with their regional centers. Kathy Spencer and Jim Simeon were both really good about following up and making sure folks were aware of Fast&C, as was Jack Hoke with the Superintendents Association. So we've been diligent in getting the word out, and so folks have made their choices one way or another about whether or not to submit applications, and we've tried to bring you the ones. Some districts, as you know, Columbus and Robson cases in point have submitted a lot of applications, and they were hard hit as well. Others have just not applied as much. So the other question that you asked had to do with the $350,000 provided by the legislature. With what you just approved this morning, your approved amounts will be over $350,000. They've got to be spent, and we're assuming everybody will spend the money that's been awarded to them. But what you've approved is over $350,000, and you have two rounds remaining. And one of the reasons we're recommending that there not be any more rounds is that we think you'll be well over that $350,000, maybe up in the $400,000 range, and that communities and schools will be close to exhausting its $100,000 by the time we get through those two rounds. Does that help?
One follow-up, if you don't mind. For some reason, I thought communities and schools, that the discussion had been there was a $500,000 grant to communities and schools for this. Is that just misapprehend that?
No, there was talk of $600,000 to communities and schools, but to date, I think only $100,000 of that $600,000. There were two grants, one $500,000 and one $100,000, and to date, I think they have $100,000 in that coffers. Dr. Townsend Smith has been following this closely. Do you have any update on that, Deanna?
The last update was that Pam from Communities in School was going to personally follow up with the donation, the $500,000 donor, to see where they were with issuing that check to them, so that we can continue the work on the communities and school side. So I'm hoping by the end of the week to have another update for you in that regard.
When it was announced, I thought that was for Hurricane Florence relief, but maybe it sounds like I may have misunderstood this process. Or was that right? Or
you understood correctly. It just hasn't been received yet, and so how we've conducted business is until we have it, it's not actual funds that we can expend.
Right. So, would that mean that if that, let's just say hypothetically, that money did come to fruition, was intended for Hurricane Florence relief, and didn't arrive for 3 more months, just hypothetically to try to get a handle on this, would that mean the committee would keep going and take later rounds of applications, but they would be directed to the $500,000 that CIS was making the decisions on based on the recommendations of the committee, or is that kind of, or have we not got that far down the road in our thinking?
We have had some preliminary conversations around that end, and you are correct. So whenever once we get the funds, we would potentially extend those rounds out for the communities and school side.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, with the $100,000 that they currently have in hand, the process that we're using is, again, a process very similar to what we've used in our work with you as the state board. We receive the applications through the same portal. The steering committee reviews them using the same criteria, and we'll route some to you all and some to communities and schools with the same kind of recommendation process.
And last question, I really have asked too many questions. I apologize, but this is helpful. I've got a better understanding now. Obviously, the committee makes recommendations. During the process of going through the executive committee here, there have been some modifications made, some further refinement maybe of the rubric based on some thorough and very good discussion that's had on some of these applications. Are we staying consistent with how the 100,000 is being dealt with by communities and schools? That is, by having two approving groups, is there? I realize the distinction or the point of consistency would be the committee's recommendations, but we have on occasion altered some of those going through the executive board, which hopefully the committee agreed with at the end of the day, or understood at least. Are we having that same kind of consistency with a second approving board is what I'm trying to make sure we're being fair for consistency purposes to our applying school districts.
Yes, we're applying the same criteria, and we're trying to be really sensitive to that. The metaphor that we used was we didn't want there to be any sense that if we got no from mom, we'd take it to dad, and vice versa. And so we're trying to apply the same criteria. But the communities and schools, we were a little while getting the process ironed out with them. And so they are in possession of the first recommendation from us, and their board has yet to act. But what we've said is that we're available to talk through with their board the same way that we talk through with you all these applications. But they haven't actually been through a board approval process yet. They've been through a staff review of the recommendation, and they seem good with the recommendation. And then but we'll see what their board does.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me offer that update, Mr. Chair. I hope that was useful.
Yes, very much so. And thanks to you, Mr. Ward, and other members of the steering committee for your investment in making this happen. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you. Seeing no further business, ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. White. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Duncan. Dr. Townsend Smith?
Yes. Dr. Oxendine?
Yes,
Ms. White?
absolutely.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, so motion carries. Thanks to my colleagues on the executive committee for going above and beyond, and we will see you later this week. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Eric Davis.
Has left the conference.